Folks, something happened in Los Angeles this week. Something that most of the drive-by media isn't going to spend too much time on, because if they did, if they actually looked at it, they'd have to admit something they are absolutely not prepared to admit. The city of Los Angeles, the largest city in California, the second largest in the entire country, just voted in a primary. And the results of that primary tell you everything you need to know about where the left has gone. Everything. You don't need a degree from the Rush Hour Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. You don't need a single briefing paper. You just need to look at what happened and let your own two eyes do the work. Karen Bass. You remember Karen Bass. The current mayor of Los Angeles, the woman who was literally in Cuba, my friends, the communist island paradise, when the Palisades fire was eating the city alive back in January. She flew home, remember that? The city was on fire and the mayor was on vacation, communing with her fellow travelers in Havana. You remember. Well, Karen Bass is now fighting for her political life. And the person giving her that fight, the person who came out of this primary strong enough to force a runoff in November, is a woman named Nithya Raman. And Nithya Raman, folks, makes Karen Bass look like Ronald Reagan. I'm not kidding. I'm Rick LeBeau. This is Rush Hour, and we are just getting started. Now, Los Angeles. Let's just sit with this for a moment, because I want you to fully appreciate what is happening here, and I don't want to rush it. No pun intended. Karen Bass has been mayor of Los Angeles since 2022, and in that time, now you might think running one of the biggest cities in the world is a full-time job, and most reasonable people would agree with that assessment. In that time, the city has seen homeless encampments metastasize to the point where they have essentially colonized public parks, underpasses, riverbeds, sidewalks in front of schools. The city has watched retail flee. It has watched residents flee. It has watched the Eaton fire burn 19 people to death. More on that later, by the way. And we now have surveillance video that tells us a great deal about why that fire spread the way it did. And through all of it, through every single catastrophe and failure and embarrassment, what has been the response from City Hall? More programs, more committees, more equity task forces, more money flowing into the insatiable maw of homeless services that somehow produce year after year after year more homeless people. Now, if you ran a restaurant and every year you tried a new recipe and every year your customers left sick, at some point, a reasonable person would stop trying new recipes and wonder if maybe the cook is the problem. But that's not how this works in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, every failure is proof that you need to do more of the same thing, faster, with more money, and anyone who questions this is obviously a hateful, uncaring, knuckle-dragging bigot who wants people to sleep on the street. That's the logic. So Karen Bass, this is the incumbent we're talking about, goes into the primary, and she's getting challenged. Not from the right, not from some Republican who wandered in from out of state. Republicans in California are approximately as rare as a sensible policy coming out of Sacramento. She's getting challenged from the left by a woman who is being compared openly, enthusiastically, by her own supporters to Zohran Mamdani. Now, if you have been following the New York City race, you know exactly who Zohran Mamdani is. If you haven't, and for those of you in Rio Linda who may be catching up, Mamdani is a democratic socialist, emphasis on the socialist, who wants to make New York City essentially a pilot program for everything Bernie Sanders ever dreamed about. Free this, nationalize that, tax the other thing into oblivion. That is the template. That is the model. And the people of Los Angeles, a significant chunk of them, looked at Nithya Raman and said, yes, more of that. Give us more of that. Karen Bass, who in any other era of American politics would have been considered a hard left progressive, is now apparently not progressive enough. She is now the moderate. She is now the establishment candidate being challenged by the real left. I want you to appreciate the distance we have traveled here. I want you to feel in your bones how far this city has drifted from anything resembling common sense. And here is what really gets me. Here is the part that I find endlessly, deliciously entertaining. The California primary system, it's called the jungle primary, they call it that, I'm not making up the name, works like this. Everybody runs together, regardless of party, and the top two vote-getters advance to the general election. The idea was to produce more competitive races, maybe push candidates toward the center. That was the theory. What it has produced in Los Angeles is a general election between Karen Bass and someone to her left. There is no Republican in this race. There is no conservative. There is no voice for the millions of working people in Los Angeles who just want their neighborhood to be safe, who want the fires to stop, who want someone, anyone at City Hall to acknowledge that the policies of the last 20 years have not worked. That voice will not be on the ballot in November. And I want to be honest with you about something here, folks, because that is what we do on this program. That is what separates this broadcast from the drive-by media. We tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. The Republican Party in California, as presently constituted, has done an absolutely spectacular job of making itself irrelevant in the state's biggest races. Now, we'll get to Steve Hilton in a moment, and that's actually some good news, genuinely good news coming out of California. Yes, I said that. Write it down. But in Los Angeles, the city itself, it is a one-party system that has now evolved into a factional war between progressives and further progressives. And so the people of Los Angeles, come November, will choose between two flavors of the same philosophy. The philosophy that says government is the answer, spending is the solution, and if your city is collapsing around you, you simply haven't given us enough control yet. There is also, and I have to mention this, the matter of how Nithya Raman made her late surge, because it deserves some scrutiny. California, now pay attention here, California allows mail-in ballots to arrive after Election Day, with no postmark required to verify when they were mailed. No postmark, none. You just have to tell us it was mailed on time. We'll take your word for it. Now, I'm not a suspicious man by nature. Yes, I am. But if you were designing an election system specifically to create maximum uncertainty, maximum delay, and maximum opportunity for shenanigans, you would be hard-pressed to improve on this. And it was exactly this flood of late-arriving mail-in ballots that powered Raman into second place. You want to know why Trump is skeptical about California election integrity? You want to know why millions of Americans are skeptical? This is why. Not because of some wild conspiracy. Because of documented, on-the-books election procedures that would make a third-world election observer raise an eyebrow. No postmark, no verification, just a pile of ballots showing up after the election is over, and we count them anyway. Our old friend Kristen Welker, you know her, NBC News, the woman who smiles pleasantly while telling you things that are demonstrably untrue. Kristen Welker went on television and essentially said, "There's nothing to see here. Trump is being paranoid. The California election system is perfectly fine and above reproach." Of course she did. Of course. This is what the drive-by media does. They see an election result that benefits the left, and suddenly they become the greatest defenders of electoral integrity since the founding of the republic. When those ballots favor Democrats, the system is sacred. When they favor Republicans, you're an election denier. I've been saying this for years, folks. Years. They know it. They know it. They know it, and they don't care, because the game is rigged in their favor, and they see no reason to change the rules. Now, here's the other thing about Los Angeles that I want you to keep in mind, and then we'll move on. This city, this beautiful, sun-drenched, ocean-kissed, gifted by geography city, has essentially been run as a laboratory for progressive ideology for decades. Everything the left says it wants to do to America, Los Angeles has already done. High taxes, extensive regulation, massive government investment in social services, sanctuary city policies, all of it. And what you have at the end of all this grand experiment is a city where 19 people burned to death in a fire while the mayor was in Cuba, where the streets in some neighborhoods look like something you'd see in a post-collapse documentary, and where the political answer on offer from the people who caused all of this is more socialism. Remarkable. Just remarkable. But don't you doubt me. November is going to be very revealing, because if Nithya Raman wins, and I'm not saying she will, but if she does, Los Angeles will have looked at everything that's gone wrong and decided the problem was that Karen Bass wasn't left-wing enough. And then we'll get to watch the whole experiment run again, just further down the dial. I say let them. I truly do. Because at some point, the lesson has to be learned. And I'm happy to be here to say, when that moment comes, see, I told you so. All right, folks, the roundup. Rapid fire. Let's go. First up, Texas, Collin County. A jury has found Carmelo Anthony guilty of murder in the stabbing death of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. And I want to say something about this before I get to the circus that surrounded this trial, because Austin Metcalf deserves to be remembered as a person. He was 17 years old. He had his whole life in front of him, and he was killed. And his family has had to sit through a trial in which the defense attorneys, bless their hearts, as we say in the South, the defense attorneys actually stood up in open court and argued that Austin Metcalf had no right to put his hands on Carmelo Anthony, and that therefore his death was his own fault. His family sat in that courtroom and heard that, the victim's family. "What is this?" was apparently their reaction. And I'll tell you, that is a far more restrained response than most people would have had. The jury saw through it, guilty of murder. And I want to point out, because the drive-by media spent a great deal of time in the early days of this case treating Carmelo Anthony as something of a sympathetic figure. There were social media campaigns. There was fundraising. There was a whole cottage industry of people spinning this into some kind of social justice narrative. The jury in Collin County, Texas, looked at the facts, applied the law, and came back with the right verdict. The American system worked. It does when you let it. Justice for Austin Metcalf Finally. Next, New Jersey. The state assembly, and I say this with genuine amazement, the state assembly of New Jersey has advanced a bill that would make it a crime, a criminal offense, to interfere with abortion services or transgender health care in the state. Criminal. You could go to jail. Now, I've heard of criminalizing a lot of things in my time. Littering, jaywalking, owning too many ferrets in certain municipalities. I think that's still on the books somewhere. But New Jersey has decided that the real threat to public safety, the thing that requires the full weight of criminal law, is someone who might inconvenience an abortion clinic or a gender transition procedure. Meanwhile, if you are a business owner in New Jersey and someone walks into your store and walks back out with everything you own, good luck to you, pal. But obstruct a transgender health care provider? That's a felony. Folks, this is what happens when you let one party run a state long enough. They stop governing and start ideologizing. New Jersey has some of the highest property taxes in the country. It has been losing residents to other states for years. People are literally leaving, taking their money, their families, their businesses, and going to Florida and Texas and Tennessee. And the response from the state legislature is to criminalize healthcare interference for procedures that half the country doesn't recognize as healthcare in the first place. This is the Democrat Party. This is what they do. They do not deliver prosperity. They deliver enforcement. And finally, I love this one. I genuinely love this one. California. Steve Hilton, Republican, former Fox News host, has advanced out of the primary and will face Xavier Becerra. Yes, that Xavier Becerra, Biden's HHS secretary, the man who was last seen overseeing one of the most catastrophic federal healthcare policy periods in modern memory in the general election for governor of California. Now, Steve Hilton is not going to have an easy time. Let me be straight with you about that. California is California. The math is the math. But here is why this matters. For years, the conventional wisdom has been that Republicans cannot compete statewide in California, that the state is simply gone, that you put your resources elsewhere and you write it off. Steve Hilton is saying no. He's running. He's competitive enough to make the general election. He is going to stand on a stage with Xavier Becerra and make the case in front of everyone that the people who have been running California into the ground for the last 30 years are the same people asking for your vote again. That argument deserves to be made loudly and on the biggest stage California has. Don't count him out, and don't let California get written off. There are millions of Californians who have been completely abandoned by their political system, and somebody needs to fight for them. My friends, Los Angeles, New Jersey, California, Texas. What do all of these stories have in common? I'll tell you. In every single one of them, ordinary Americans are watching their institutions either fail them or be weaponized against them. A city that can't keep the lights on or put out a fire is now debating whether to go harder left. A state that can't stop people from leaving is now criminalizing disagreement. And a trial that should have been simple. A boy was killed, a jury heard the evidence, justice was rendered. Even that became an argument, a narrative, a cause. The American people are not stupid. I want to say that. I want to say it clearly and without reservation. The American people, the ones driving to work right now, the ones listening on their commute, in their trucks, in their cars, on their earbuds, walking the dog, you are not stupid. You see what is happening. You know that what they're telling you and what you can see with your own eyes are two different things. The drive-by media will keep telling you the system is working fine, the elections are beyond question, the policies just need more time, the failures are someone else's fault. They will keep saying it because it is the only thing they know how to say. And we will keep being right here, every day, armed with the golden EIP microphone, a full and undivided brain, unlike some people we could name, and the absolute unshakable conviction that this country is worth fighting for. America does not need to become Los Angeles. America does not need to become New Jersey. America has a choice, and every election, every jury, every vote, every person who calls in and says the economy is working for them again, every single one of those things is proof that the choice is still ours to make. Do not let them take that from you. I'm Rick LeBeau. This has been Rush Hour, same time tomorrow, if they let us back on.